Hi, welcome to Never Show the Monster. I'm Kelly Attaway, and with me is Chelsea Hollander. Today we're talking about the Postcard Killings, another Jeffrey Dean Morgan, not quite horror movie. Do you want to just get into it? Let's address
Yes.
the lack of horror to start.
Yeah, so this movie's not really a horror movie. It is based on a James Patterson novel, so it's kind of a thriller, kind of drama mystery. But it does segue into our next series, which is going to be an art horror movie series. Not art like as in it's beautifully done, but art as in they have art in it.
Yeah, we're
We'll do
more
a nicer
simple.
one later, but this
We're
is not going to
simple
be
folk.
pretty.
You get it. Postcard killing. You get it. Postcard art. There's like
Yeah.
art on postcards. You guys get
Exactly.
it.
That's what it is. But yeah, so we chose this not necessarily because it was horror, but it did have some gruesome death. If you watch the trailer, you're going to be like, "Oh, that seems pretty gross. This seems like it's going to be horror." And then you
It
kind
is
of
pretty
watch it,
gross.
and you're like, "No,
Parts
it's
of it
not
are pretty
really that."
gross.
Yeah.
We like opened straight onto a murder. Do you remember this? Which
Yeah,
one was
roughly
it?
when it was happening. Starts off 2 bodies, blood being drained.
Blood being drained.
Yeah.
I remember just being like, "Oh, we're getting into it." Like, fuck
Yeah.
an exposition. Let's dive right in.
And I feel like that's kind of accurate to how the movie goes as it goes along, because the part that I would think would be the end part was kind of near the beginning/middle, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that this is going to continue for a while. But
Wait,
I mean,
what
I
part?
haven't watched a lot of. Well, do we want to get into that now?
Just give me a teaser.
Well,
What
kind of
part
when
did
you
you
think
think?
that was going to be near the end.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I mean, there are like 5 twists, so it's one of the twists.
Oh, I guess I didn't clock a single twist.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you guys want to go watch it before we talk about all these twists and turns. I mean, they were obvious to anybody who understands movies, but they're not obvious to people who don't, I guess. But this is on Hulu if you want to watch it. So for not forewarning, but a recommendation there if you want to see it before we do talk about it. And it's also got a great cast. It's got obviously Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Famke Janssen.
Who
Cush
is
Jumbo?
she? The whole time I was like, I know her. I know her.
She was in a movie that premiered at the Bentonville Film Festival, but it wasn't very big, so that doesn't help. But she is very, very famous. She is the original Jean Grey from the...
That's how I know her. Okay.
Yep. So that's probably her most famous role, but she's been in a ton, so I don't want to like just be like, oh, that's all she's done.
She was also in
she was on House
GoldenEye.
on Haunted Hill.
Oh, so she was.
Yeah, so she does do a bunch of horror movies, I think, which is nice. Well, that one's not horror, so ignore that. X-Men is also not horror, in case you guys are wondering. I'm not dumb. Okay, sometimes, but not for this. Horror, it says 41, but it also lists all the... Oh, Hansel... Oh, she was in The Faculty. That was the first time I saw her.
Oh, yep.
Oh, and she was in Hemlock Grove, Hide and Seek. Man, she's been in a lot.
All right, we've got our next series.
Yeah. Wow, this is pretty good. And then it just goes into episodes of Hemlock Grove, which isn't super helpful, but same with whenever I looked at Jeffrey Dean Morgan's, I looked at horror and he had the biggest list ever, but it was because it counted every episode of Supernatural and every episode of Walking Dead he was in. I was like, God. He was in 300 horror movies? No, he was not. But yeah, the movie is based on a novel by James Patterson, written by a lot of other screenplay writers, directed by Dennis Tanvok, and it is just about a New York detective who investigates the death of his daughter. That's about it.
Which I didn't realize. I didn't realize he was investigating his daughter until he went to ID her body. And
but
I was
that happens immediately.
I know, but I was like, this detective is like really in his feelings about this.
Yeah, whenever he goes and then he right after the scene where they drain the bodies, it then goes to a morgue, immediately cuts to a morgue where Jeffrey Dean Morgan is identifying two bodies, identifies the male first, and he's like, yes, that's him, and then shows the other body, and then he starts crying and barely gets out a
Yeah,
head shake. You can't see me, head shake.
he's rough in that scene. And then, which I wanted to congratulate him on, because his crying scene in The Possession was really bad. This was much better.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have comments on later crying scenes that I was pleasantly surprised with. I went back and forth on how I felt about it, but I sat on it for a bit, and then I was like, you know what? That I feel like that is the appropriate reaction to this moment.
Okay, good for him. He then goes back to the hotel and just starts chugging
Oh yeah.
liquor, like popping between clear bottles, brown bottles. He's got every type of liquor under the sun, and he's like drinking them like Gatorade.
And it was weird because it had like an edit of like a 90s grunge music video during that time. But that editing's used nowhere else in the movie.
I have that in
Just
my notes too. Like the transitions in the beginning were so weird, and
yeah, I was like,
then those just get dropped. Yeah.
I was like, what is happening? Why is it like this? And then it never came up again.
Yeah,
Like it
thankfully, because
slowly
I
turned
was
into a
like,
different movie. It was like it was done by two different people.
yes, it was weird. It was very weird. Um I do have a note about this scene in the hotel room though. He's like scream crying. He's going to get a noise complaint. Like you can't just do that in a hotel.
I mean, you can. That's what hotels are for sometimes,
I
maybe.
think that they call and ask you to say they say, "Mr. Morgan, please, sir."
Or the
Could you
name of
quiet
his
down?
character in the movie, which
No.
is Jacob Cannon, which I also they do talk about in the article, but his name just kind of like never happened in my brain. I just kept being like, "What's his name?" every time he came on screen, and no one would say his name.
Oh, they said Cannon a bunch.
I know, okay? It just wasn't apparent to me.
Um, he does. It's my duty to comment on this every movie we discuss. He looks great.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was like, he seems I don't know why I felt so comforted by his presence.
Hmm.
Whenever it would just be a scene with just his face, I'd be like, it would just kind of felt warm. I mean, it was
Yeah,
sad. He was going through a hard time,
but
but
it was nice to see him.
I don't know if it was with watching all the Jeffrey Dean Morgan's movies we've been watching and how much stuff I've been looking at of him. Just like when I saw him, it was like seeing an old friend.
Yeah,
Just being like,
yeah.
"Oh, I'm so glad you're here."
Hey, buddy.
Even when he was so distraught. And then so after the drinking and crying, it then goes to the train where we see a young couple who looks like they just got married, very happy,
Mhm.
very bubbly. They have obviously been traveling for a while based on what they're saying, and the girl is trying to look for a receipt that she had misplaced.
She's building a like a scrapbook with
Yes.
odds and
It
ends of places it looks like places they've visited.
and then that's where we meet Peter.
Piotr,
Yes, Mr. Rings, as you like to call him.
Mr. Rings. He was wearing mad rings.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like cool and a little
Yeah.
scary. He's
He
like
was wearing mostly black.
he was wearing mostly black, covered in
Mhm.
tattoos. Um and did you notice in this scene, since we've seen the end of the movie, we know what's up.
Mhm.
Um the bubbly couple comments on his tattoos, and the guy says something like really creepy in retrospect. He like gestures toward the guy's skin and is like, "My wife really loves art."
Oh, I did not notice that.
Yeah.
I noticed I know that they talked about his tattoos and he talked about how like he was getting his other arm done,
Mhm.
and that was all I remember, but I did not remember that little hint in there.
Yep.
I guess if I didn't watch the trailer, I also wouldn't know about the each of the if I went into this movie blind, none of that would
Which I
have.
did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's good that you caught it because I did. But like the trailer has them showing, like, oh, these are paintings. All of the dead bodies are being posed as paintings.
I guess I knew that, but only because you had told me. I hadn't seen
Yeah,
the trailer.
because I was like, oh, because it didn't really make that apparent until later. It just looked like gruesome murders.
But very, like, it was like Hannibal. Like, they were very,
Mm.
um, like, abstract and intricate
Yes,
poses.
intricate. That was what I was like. I was trying to think of the word, and I was like specific, and I was like, that's not it, but
Also
intricate.
that.
Yeah,
Like, one of the murders we
purposeful.
find purposeful, very
Mm-hmm.
purposeful. One of the murders we find is a couple laying together with their lips removed and sewn, their faces sewn together. And you know what this made me think of? Um do you remember years and years and years ago when I was living on your couch, we
Oh,
yep,
oh
uh-huh.
God, no! Why are
we
you breaking this up? I want to sleep
I'm
tonight.
sorry for the home listener. We watched some short video where this woman is in the bathroom and she's like scrubbing the shit out of her lips. Um, and I think
With like a steel wool.
with like steel wool, and I think she ultimately like gets out scissors and cuts them off.
Yes, I think that that's accurate.
Yeah, why
Mm.
did we watch that?
We went through a phase. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, it all
We
tracks. It
go
all
for
adds
lighter
up.
movies now, but we went for very, very dark movies at that time.
Oh god, that was rough. That was hard to watch. I, like, hadn't thought about that in 1,000 years until
Until
that
that
scene
happened.
in the movie, and
Oh,
I was like, "Ah!"
luckily it did not jog my brain to think about it. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm just
sorry.
gonna hold my lips for the rest of this. That's fine.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. You're just gonna see me make weird faces because I'm gonna be like, just gotta make sure they're still there. Oh God. Yeah, I can't even remember what the name of that Scrub was. It called Scrub? Like it
God, it
was
might have
one
been.
word,
Jesus.
and I was like, and it was like because her husband wasn't paying
'Cause
attention
her
to her,
husband, yeah.
and she was like, "Am I?" And she came out and she said something like, "Am I pretty now?" or something, and I was like,
Ooh,
"Oh, good on
I didn't
them. They
remember
made
any of
something."
that.
A lot of stuff has just deleted out of my brain, but good for them for making something that has just seared its presence.
Oh, boy.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Sorry I
this
brought it up.
this took a turn. I was just going to talk lighthearted about this mystery thriller, and now we're here. It's fine. Oh God, yeah, that. Uh, I mean, it's a very short video, so if you guys like gross stuff, go check it out. But if you don't check it out, and don't.
Be careful trying to Google your way into that. I feel like
Yeah, you're probably going to find worse stuff before you even get to it now.
yeah.
At that time, it was. I don't want to be like it was harder to get to stuff like that, but I think it was more difficult. Or was
What
it easier?
I have no idea.
I saw a TikTok recently where they talked about how easy it was for them to find, or like when you downloaded something, you weren't sure if you were going to get what you actually downloaded, or you were going to get like a terrible video of something terrible happening.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just wanted to watch I don't want to say the new Avengers, the new Iron Man. So I downloaded it, and you would hope that you got Iron Man. Not always, though.
#LimeWire.
Amen. Rest in peace. Is it still alive?
I have no idea.
Anyway, where were we? We met Peter. Peter's got art all over him. He seems very shady, or at least
Mhm.
that's how they portray him. He seems like he's not up to no good, but he's basically like, you guys should come hang out with me. Get off at the next stop. With this stranger. It's fine. You want to hang out with me. You totally want to hang out with me. You want this to happen. Except he did it very cool, not how I would do it and how I did it just now.
Yeah, he was
I
very
just don't know how to
casual
talk
about
to
it.
people.
But it still was like, "Oh, you're Americans traveling in England. Nobody knows your exact where, or not England. I forget where they were at this point. In Europe. They were traveling
They
across
were
Europe.
between Munich and Switzerland, somewhere in
Okay.
Switzerland.
So he's like, yeah, that's shady. Get off the train with me at the next stop. Nobody knows where
Yeah.
you are in a strange country where you don't know how to navigate as well as I do."
Yep. Yep.
No.
And then the couple's just like, I can't believe you're about to invite him along with us. And he was like, well, I can't. And then they were like, well, we'll just get off while he goes and gets us some vodka, because they were just going to straight up drink vodka on the train.
What
That's
was
what
his
you do in
plan there? How
Europeans.
long
That was,
until the
yeah, because I
next
was like,
stop?
did they stop? I was like, I mean, obviously cut away and then came back. Maybe he was in a line, There was a football team there. The
I'm
football team
not
may have
worried about
also
that.
been
I'm
in
not worried
line.
about how long it took to get the vodka. He's saying, "Get off with me at the next stop.
But
Let me
then there
get a
was
bottle
another
of
stop because they
vodka."
disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he meets up with them, they're gonna meet up later. And then
They're
when he
going to
meets
meet
up
up
with them
later.
later, he's like, "Oh, you guys," and they were like, "We just got off at the next stop. Sorry, man." And I was like, "Oh, they dodged that bullet, or did
Dun,
they?"
dun, dun.
And then I was gonna say, and then after that, it cuts to Valerie, who is the mother of the daughter, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan
This is
speaking and
this is
very
rough.
upset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is a hard scene to watch. Um she's understandably very upset, but she's like yelling at Jeffrey Dean Morgan, "Why did you send her
Yeah.
here?" Because I guess the daughter had just gotten married, and for their honeymoon, Jeffrey Dean Morgan sent them on this backpacking trip through Europe. And the mom is like totally blaming Jeffrey Dean Morgan for the death of their daughter. And that's like real rough to watch.
That was, yeah, agreed.
He
Uh,
takes it well, though. She's like freaking out, and he just hugs her, tries
yeah.
to calm her down, which she
Yeah.
needed. Like she doesn't mean any of that,
Yeah, they were
you
definitely
know.
at different stages of grief. I feel like, and
Hmm.
he was at a point where he was like, "I'm not angry right now. I know that you're angry," and they
Right.
kind of just both of them cycle through this the entire movie, just go through
Yeah.
different cycles of grief on where they're at.
But he's already like he's moved on to I'm gonna find her
Mm-hmm.
killer because he is a detective.
Yep.
Now, obviously he's a NYPD detective, so he doesn't have jurisdiction here, obviously. But he
Yes.
like storms into his hotel
Tries.
room, tries. He
Yep.
storms into his hotel room, takes the pictures off the wall, and I got so excited. I was like, "Ooh, we're making a murder map! We're making a murder
Oh my
map!"
god. Let me find that on my notes are like all in caps, and I was like, I'm so excited. Maps.
So he starts plotting. um I mean, it's what it sounds like. It's a murder map. It's like that meme with
Yeah.
the guy from
Charlie Day.
always,
Not,
yeah,
is
Charlie.
it Charlie
Yeah.
Day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where he's
Um
being very conspiratorial. And
yeah.
then he just has little post-its on it that are like trash, love, I don't know. And I'm like, they didn't spend a lot of time on those post-its.
They really did not.
And I was like, I feel like if I paused it, I would find some fun ones in there. And I thought about it. I was like,
Ooh.
I don't have time to pause it today.
And what those notes are about are so as you may have guessed, postcards come into play. So with each of these gruesome murders that always features a couple, the murderers send a postcard to the local police with like a cryptic message on it. So I think that those post-its are reference to the messages.
Yeah. The trash one? Is there a trash one? Or maybe he was talking about finding something in the trash
Oh, maybe.
for that one. That was the one that stood out to me because one of them, like two of them, I was like, okay, those make sense. And then the third one, I was like, that one, was there trash in that one? Is that something that we're not seeing? But it was pretty, I don't know. I guess I've never made a murder map before. Maybe I should
Mm,
one day to get the full
mm-hmm.
feel of this.
Yeah,
But I
same.
did like the parts where he was just staring at it, and she's got like a circle of the three areas where you have seen the murders. And by this point, there have been three murders. There was one prior to his daughter, his daughters, and one that happened in Munich. So then we've traveled from Madrid. Madrid was the first murder, and then London the second, and then Munich the third. And they all like the one we find out later that his daughter was posed and mutilated in a way that her arm was cut off and the arm was put in the husband's mouth, or the what was left
The
of the arm was put in the
yeah,
husband's mouth.
yeah. And one thing about that mutilation, there's a gruesome mutilation at each murder,
Mhm.
and then a missing body part is found at the next murder or a subsequent murder. Um, and so Jeffrey Dean Morgan is sort of like, not only does he want to find his daughter's murderer, but he sort of wants to find her hands, you know?
Oh yeah. So both of her hands are missing in this, and he constantly keeps asking every cop he runs into, "Arms?
Yeah,
Are there
do you
arms?"
find any hands over there?
And they're like, "Nope, we have not found them." He first meets with cop in London, and it does not go super well. The cop in London's or detective in London is very, I don't want to be like by the book. Whenever he meets him, he's basically like, let me know. I'm a cop too, cop to cop. And he was like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you anything. And I was like, I mean, good job. You're doing your job and you're doing it the right way.
No,
And
tell him.
so then you kind of, that is also something I really liked about the movie, was the traveling throughout countries and seeing how different jurisdictions had dealt with it. I don't know how real that is in real life.
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character was pretty accurate to how a American cop would act, and they kind of play off that the entire time.
Yeah, they what is it, the like Swiss police are like, we handle things differently here. We don't just go in with our guns.
Yeah,
And I was like,
it was shoot
real.
first, ask questions later, and I was like, yeah. And then,
is it gross that I wanted to see the crime scenes more?
no, it's not, and I was disappointed by not being able to see them because I couldn't make. And I guess that's why they could keep this more of a mystery thriller than a horror movie, because if they did actually sit on the crime scenes longer, it could have been considered, I feel like it could have been considered a horror type movie. I don't know. I guess in the context of, if you thought about the movie Seven, would you consider that a horror movie? Because I would consider that a horror movie.
Haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's one that it has, like, it's based off of the Seven Deadly Sins, and a lot of the crime scenes are put out that way. I'm gonna see what they label it as. I'm gonna look at IMDb. Do they label this as horror? Crime, drama, mystery. You know what? Maybe I shouldn't be on this podcast. Bye, guys. This is the end of me. But I think movies where they have intricate murder scenes that have thought put into them by a serial killer is terrifying.
I think that the difference is whether you see the mutilation. Like if you just
while
see,
it's happening.
Yeah, like if you just see the end result, I think it falls under crime drama.
Gotcha.
And if you are like spending time with the serial killer, then you get categorized as horror.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just feel like I guess the response it's trying to elicit whenever you watch somebody actually murder someone is a different response than seeing the outcome.
Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't be as terrified with someone murdering me if I just saw the end result than if I saw someone being like sliced up.
Wait, sorry. What were you just imagining somebody murdering you, only you just see the end result? Okay.
I mean,
I'm just curious how that, so dead you, ghost you sees the end result and you're like, "Oh,
okay. That's
not so
fine.
bad."
Well, I'm also now trying to think of what painting I would be.
Oh,
or what painting they would have me as.
Probably that one that Ryan did of you. That's your
Would
face.
my eyes be pulled out? I'm
Yeah,
trying
they'd
to
just
think
be
of how to
dangling.
make it scary. Yeah, I don't know of any. I can't think of any paintings right now.
I don't know.
I can think of modern paintings. I don't know any of the older ones.
I don't know any. I cannot. I don't
Could
know.
be the one with the one where the little demon is on the chest.
Oh, the like succubus one?
Is that it? That's the one.
Know.
That's probably how.
You know what would be a lot of mutilation? Picasso. Just make me a Picasso.
All right, so I would hope that you and I would be laid out like a Picasso. That one they wouldn't have been able to show, I think, is what they're getting at on that.
Jesus
they have
Christ!
To go all the way with the classics because, whew. Oh, I'm sure that there's somewhere that has done that, though. I'm gonna look that up later. You guys will hear about it at the beginning of the next episode. All right, that's the sequel. Actually, speaking of, we'll get to that. At the end, it seemed like there's going to be a sequel, and I was like, "What the fuck could they make a sequel on this for? Like, what would the sequel be?" Oh, we haven't even gotten to the good parts, so we'll wait until we discuss what the sequel could possibly be.
So at some point,
good.
oh no, you've got better notes. What happens next?
I was gonna say, so they're continuing to go throughout, and they're starting to narrow in, and then they figure out that all the crime scenes are the same as paintings. The fact that it took this long to figure that out blows my mind, because it was kind of obvious. I don't know. There were a couple things that I was like, this is pretty obvious, and the fact that it's taking you guys this long to figure that out is upsetting. But he was like, oh, there's a pattern here because of the amount of time. And I was like, obviously. Did this even need to be said? But there are parts where it does that. But they, right before every killing, they send a postcard is sent to a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a postcard sent to a journalist, and then shortly after, or shortly before the murder, a picture of who is going to be murdered is sent to the journalist.
Whoa, I missed that. A picture of who's going to be murdered?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No. How?
They had a picture of his, because that's when he's talking to the German detective, because the German detective ends up being his bro, and they get along really well because the German detective's about to retire, so he's willing to take more chances. So Jeffrey Dean Morgan's like, you and I will figure this all out together. Forget everyone else. Screw the Swedes. Is basically where he gets with this guy. But the German detective tells them really early on, there was also a picture of your daughter that came through. And he was like, can I have the picture? And he was like, there's no way I can give that to you. He was like, is she alive in the picture? And he said, yes. So it was the
Oh,
last
that's
time she was
right.
alive. But it was like,
Yeah.
it wasn't when, it was just like a nice picture of her and her husband together. It wasn't like before they murdered them. It was just like them on the street walking, looking very
No,
happy.
I totally missed that. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
But I don't think that I don't think that they bring it up other than that and the last part. But I think that they introduce that to talk about the last part at the end of the movie.
oh
Uh,
boy, I don't
yeah.
remember. I don't remember the last part, I
We'll loop
guess.
back around, because then I have a little thing where Jeffrey Dean Morgan confronts the first journalist, and first the security guard walks over with him, and then he's like, he explains who he is. He's like, do you have a daughter? I am the father of the daughter that was murdered. And he tells the security guard to go ahead and leave. And I was like, I'm sorry, a murderer just sent you a postcard, and this guy is claiming to be someone, and you're just like, it's okay, security guard, I can deal with this
Because
man.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan has honest
He's so
eyes.
believable. Yeah, that's how he got Hilary Swank
You're
into
right.
that apartment.
You're right. This scene made me mad. This is just because I have daddy issues, I guess. But he is like, there's nothing more important to a father than a daughter. And I was like, get fucked.
Yeah, I was going to say that line also. I was like, oh, man.
Knock it off.
And then they find out the postcard has gone to Sweden to a Scandinavian, it says Scandinavian journalist on the IMDb page, but she's an American journalist working in Scandinavia. And she writes about how she is an outsider living in that community.
Yeah.
And that's like her whole thing. And she receives an article, or she receives a postcard, and then the Swedish detectives take over from there. And then he like meets up with her and is like, hey, I'm the father of the girl that was murdered. Please help me. And she was like, I am not going to help you, weird guy. You just followed me home. Thank you, but no thank you.
Okay, I had a question about that scene. He tries to contact her while she's at work. Mm-hmm. She gets on her little bicycle, starts biking away. Then so she's going home. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is at her home when she arrives there.
No, he runs after her, and then he takes a taxi behind her.
Oh, I missed
he's in a taxi behind her, because I was like, is the taxi Jeffrey Dean Morgan, or is it the killers? And why are they going after her?
Okay, I missed the taxi. I was like, how did he know where she lived?
Yeah, no, there was a taxi that just kind of followed her for her entire bike ride home.
Well, I don't like that either.
Yeah,
but
then I have Jeffrey Dean Morgan looking like a suspect outside of her work, runs after her, doesn't yell, taxi following her. Is it Jeffrey Dean Morgan? Yeah, she's not helping, which I think is smart of her. And then he puts the card through a crack in her door. Not the side of her door, the middle.
A middle crack, yeah.
And then we cut back to the happy couple again, running into Patrick, and he makes more unsettling remarks like he did before.
Wait,
and is like,
Patrick?
Hey, Peter. It is Peter. Sorry, I interchanged it like 5 times in this. My notes are bad because I kept being like, is it Patrick? Is it Peter? And then we know for sure it's Yeah.
Mr. Rings. We know for sure it's
Mr.
Mr.
Rings.
Rings.
Okay, anytime I have a P name, I guarantee you I'm probably talking about the same person, but it's going to be a different name.
So when the bubbly couple and Mr. Rings meet up again, this time Mr. Rings has his wife with him. And I have in my notes, oh, I assume they're the next victims. I hope it's not Mr. Rings.
I have, yeah, and I have Patrick, which we know is incorrect, goes to a rave and brings Trinity with him because I thought she looked like Trinity from The Matrix.
Oh, got it.
And then the girl, I couldn't figure out the girl's name, but her name is, the girl who is the journalist, her name is Desi.
Desi.
Yeah, I kept calling her Sleuthy.
That's better, honestly.
Because I was like, oh, she's really good at investigating, which she's a journalist, so maybe she should be. And she then watched some. And my question here is, she was scrolling through trying to find out more about the girl who was killed, and then she comes upon an article about her, and then there is a short video of her wedding, which also has Jeffrey Dean Morgan and some sweet transition lenses.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of that. However, does that happen often when someone's murdered? They post home videos of the people to humanize them? Because I've never really seen that where
I don't know.
make public the home videos unless somebody is like currently missing or something. I don't ever see them making very personal videos public.
I mean, maybe her Instagram is public and they just...
That's understandable.
Yeah.
But it was like an article and it was like, here, this is the girl that was killed. Please watch her wedding video.
Well, here's what happened is the journalist that wrote that article stumbled across her Instagram, saw how foxy Jeffrey Dean Morgan was, and was like, let's put a little treat for the people.
God bless.
Like, this is a sad story. Let's pop a little Easter egg in there.
So then that's how she was like, oh, he's okay. He really is her father. He's not trying to murder me. She's the only one who's exercising caution. Proud of that girl.
She goes on to research him some, and she pulls up a photo of him from like 25 years ago. And I was like, hubba hubba ding ding.
Yeah. And so she finally goes back and talks to him. And then they start working together.
Okay, here's my question about Desi. That's a fake American accent, right?
No.
No?
She's in a lot of TV shows that I've watched.
Well,
she's American.
That was the second fakest American accent I've ever heard behind Emma
Watson.
Watson.
It's a British actress.
Yep. Fucking told ya. Fucking nailed it.
I'm wrong. I've watched her in other TV shows, and she has had an American accent in them.
She was like, hamburger.
Oh, no. She may have had a British accent in them.
Oh, maybe.
That might have been why I was thrown off, because I was like, she's familiar, but not familiar enough for me to place her. So when I looked her up, and I was like, oh, yeah, I watched that show. I've seen her in that.
I'm just...
Yeah, she was in Torchwood. Yeah, she's definitely British.
Oh,
my bad. You were right. That was a bad accent. I don't pay attention.
There was something about it. I was, and then once I heard it, I couldn't stop hearing it. So every time she was on screen, I was like, American.
I mean, they could have kept her British, and I think it would have played fine for the character. I don't think it would have been the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that they needed to make that stretch.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know.
Then, oh yeah, okay. So then kind of around this part, someone finally saw the connection to the art. And then they described what a doubting Thomas was, which was one of the people that was one of the paintings, one of the dead bodies.
Go on.
Fingers in the ribs. And then that's because Thomas was like, I don't believe you're Jesus. Let me stick my hand in your ribs. And I was like, all right. I also didn't know that a doubting Thomas was that. So that was a nice.
I didn't either. I have that in my notes too. Testing the wound to see if it bleeds is the note I took down. I was like, ew, Thomas, get your fingers out of there.
Gross. And I was like,
it made me think of, not to do a plug for my other podcast, but if you're a Wheel of Time fan, listen to 13th Depository wherever you get your podcasts. But in some of the early episodes, everybody is just touching everybody else's wounds. like just sticking their finger. They're a bunch of doubting Thomases. They're just
Isn't
like
that
poking around in there. And I was like, stop it.
that's how
at,
infections
at
happen?
least wash your hands. God damn.
Yeah, that's how people die from like paper cuts. Is you just
Oh,
keep poking them with bacteria.
stop touching them. Jesus.
Ugh. Uh, yeah, definitely go listen to that podcast. Pause this one and go listen to that one right now. Pause this one and go download it and listen to it right after. So we have Doubting Thomas. German guy isn't by the book. Checking the gallery cameras. And then that's when they start checking the gallery cameras and they're trying to narrow down who it might be because they know the painting, because they have been posing these couples. They're all newlyweds as well. So they have been posing all of these couples as paintings that are actually located in the art museums of the city that they're in. So they find specific paintings and then they associate it to that. And so they're watching the camera that's right outside, and then they just see somebody walk up with a hood
to examine the painting.
And they don't turn around and you can't see him. But Jeffrey Dean Morgan's like, that's the one. That's the one. I know it. I know it.
Well, they did look pretty shady on that security camera. Plus, JDM says a line that's like 24 security cameras and not one caught their face. Like,
yeah,
like they
that's
knew where
obviously
the
trying to
cameras
hide
were.
from it.
Yeah.
And to that point, that's when I knew exactly what was going to happen. Because if it was our dearest Piotr Piotr and his wife, we would have seen their face because we are already on to them.
Right.
We did not see their face. And then I was like, oh, now I know who the killer is. Thank you guys.
Got it.
Thank you for giving me that. And I
think I just recognized her. I don't think that I put anything together. It was just like a petite woman.
Oh, her body. Yeah.
In a hoodie. And I was like, got it, Blondo.
Yeah. When I saw that, I was just like, oh, okay, that's definitely, if you're not going to show me who it is, that's definitely going to be the sweet couple. And that also, which this is probably my fault because this movie came out before the movie I'm about to talk about. But the movie that came out in 2021, this movie came out in 2020, was the new Conjuring of The Devil Made Me Do It. And the boy in the happy couple is the same boy from The Devil Made Me Do It.
Oh, I didn't recognize him.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was like a, hey, look at this awesome, I did such a great job, you shouldn't hire me for this one. Okay. But it sounds like he plays a nice guy that murders people, and it seems like it's not really him. So I'm just like, well, okay, that's just.
Wait, what? In The Conjuring?
Yeah.
What?
He murdered a bunch of people.
Yeah.
The devil made him do it.
The devil did make him do it. I saw it.
Yeah, and in this one, it's the same guy. So he's also murdering people, but seeming very, very nice.
I guess the devil made him do it still.
No, I don't think the devil. I mean, if the devil made him do it is the girl, then maybe.
That's who I meant. The she-devil. Yeah. The she-devil made him do it.
You're not wrong. So after this, where are they here? Okay,
they're taking that ferry.
Yeah.
Peter and Trinity and Bubbly couple are on a ferry out to some house that Peter and Trinity know about. And I really, this scene really, really, really made me want to travel abroad. I was like, man, I want to take a ferry in Europe.
There were so many parts of those that I was just like, oh, this is so pretty. Like so whenever pretty. Even they went to the train station in Sweden, I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, every scene just kind of was like just really, and then walking around in the market talking about murders. It was just really pretty. Do recommend if you're feeling like you need to travel right now. It did just make me want to travel.
So my next note is just simply, no, I liked Mr. Rings.
Yeah. So then what happens after that is they list them. Sweden finds them as people of interest, and they were like, these people are interesting. They went from Germany to Sweden, and that's where we know the last murder was. And then they go to their house, and then they're like, oh, okay, they're dead.
They're super dead.
Bodies.
And they're like posed, like they've been.
Yeah, what were they
have
posed
fallen.
As?
I don't know the arts.
Well, because everyone, I was like, oh, that's the kiss. And none of them were the kiss. But
not even the one without the lips.
Oh, no, that was Cupid and Psyche.
Oh,
Yeah, because
that means
they
nothing to
are
me.
really close. So their lips aren't like in that their lips are close enough to touch, but they don't touch, and it's kind of all about them kissing but not kissing.
Mm,
So that's why they removed their lips because they can't. They're not allowed to kiss.
yeah. And it's at this point in the movie where they're being interviewed by the police. The bubbly couple are being interviewed by the police, and my note is just, "Oh, s- siblings?"
Okay, did they say that they were siblings
They
in
said
that part?
something that made me realize they were siblings. Maybe they
Oh, weird.
maybe
Because that happens. I got that from whenever what's his face went and talked, or what's her face, Valerie went and talked to the father.
oh,
That's the part. And then I mean,
I
when
got it in the interview.
I watched it with Ryan, and Ryan was like, they talked about it in the interview, and I was like, when the fuck did they talk about it? So I guess that they were
okay.
like, some people aren't gonna get it, so we're gonna reiterate it later. And I guess that makes sense now because one of my notes is, man, they bring up stuff a lot. It's like they're trying to drive something home. But now I kind of feel like it was for my benefit. That's okay.
It made me think of there was this book series that I read a ton as a kid, like way too young to be reading it. It's I want to say they're called Robin Light Mysteries.
Mm,
It was a mystery series for adults that I read as a small child. Um and in one of them, oh, so it's about this gal who's a PI, and in one of them she discovers who the murderer is, and I just have this vivid scene of siblings doing it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so I was like, "Oh no."
yeah. Not ideal.
Not
And
ideal.
I guess around the interview they do find out. Well, they're very much like, oh, we have receipts from everywhere we're from. We went to Paris. We never went to Madrid. What are you talking about?
Mhm.
And they seem very like they seem innocent, but JDM's not buying it.
No,
He's like,
she's and the gal is, like, weirdly stoic in the interview. Like, the guy seems earnest, but the
mm-hmm.
gal is, like, stone facing them, which is very suspicious.
But she also seems like she is giving them like she's saying everything and answering every question and just
Mhm.
being like, but then the part where he was like, can I see your receipt from this museum? And she was like, I'm tired. And I was like,
Oh,
you are very cooperative up until this point, lady.
yep.
Um, and she was like, fine, I'll find it. And then she gives them the receipt that she has from her memory book. Um, yeah. And then after that, they have to let them go because they don't have enough to keep them on.
They don't have any evidence. It's
So
all
what? Where are they? My biggest question at this point. We know it's them. Where the fuck are they hiding the body parts? I was like, or is it in their
oh,
backpacks because they're continuing to travel? They have to use the body parts to the next stop. Do they ship it?
um, that's a really great question. Where are the receipts for that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I That's the part I was like, I don't know how they get that from one. I was like, oh, it's fine. They'll find it in the
In their
when they
bags or
look through their
whatever.
stuff, and then they never found it. And I was like, okay, that should have been
Could you
that.
imagine that packing list? You're like, "Got it. Okay, toothbrush, phone charger, uh,
Hands,
hands."
eyeballs. Um, but they say that they're 22 and 19. They can't hold them. They don't have enough evidence to hold them. They can only hold them for 12 hours, so they let them go, and then they continue to track them. But then at the same time, this is where my notes end. So this is when I tried to focus on the movie.
Uh-oh, because
So
I'm
then
looking at
at the
my
same
notes and I'm
time,
like,
okay,
"Hmm."
so the last half is going to be really iffy, you guys. So then we cut to Valerie, who
Yeah.
is like, I'm going to go talk to my connections to figure out who they are because they have nothing past 4 years. No one can get anything on them. No one knows who they are. So then you find out um, uh, Famke Janssen's character, Valerie, goes and talks to an old guy. I don't really know what he does. Maybe he works for the FBI or something. But I think you find out that the son had turned in his father for money laundering or something, like some big tax evasion. Like his father was very very rich, and he turned him in. And then you find out that he has an older sister, and they are connected at the hip, and they would never go anywhere
Mhm.
apart.
Without each other. Yeah.
And that's when I found out that they were related. And then in the next scene, Jeffrey Dean Morgan's talking to his journalist friend, fake American,
Fake American.
the British girl who's fake American, and they then say, "Oh, yeah, definitely." They're definitely brother and sister. And I was like, oh, yeah, I thought we figured that out in the last scene. But I guess everybody figured it out 4 scenes before me. So, okay. I guess that's the scene that gets the people that aren't caught up yet. I'm the, like, it's the porridge. I'm the one in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm the one in the middle. Where
You're just right.
I'm not fast, but I'm not the slowest. So I appreciate it. Something that I complained about before. I'm like, I guess they're doing the right thing. They're trying to drive that home. So you find out that they're brother and sister. And then after that, I have no notes, so I keep looking down at my notes, hoping that it'll give me anything. And I'm trying to figure out what happens after that, but it's mostly just them trying to find them, and you kind of find out why they're doing this. You find out that their father was incredibly abusive and a terrible person, and their mother had taken her life, and they just had a really, really rough childhood. At one part, Valerie goes into their old house, and then there's like a little door with a lock on the outside, which they don't readdress, which makes me believe that they locked him into a tiny holding space sometimes. But she comes out of it, and then turns out the neighbor had come over, and luckily the neighbor is just
a little
Gabby
gossip.
as all get out.
She wants to chat.
Oh yeah, and she pours Valerie some wine, and she pours herself a big old glass. Like that glass was up to the top, and I was like, "Oh, you're having an afternoon." I was like,
"What I wrote in my notes is, man, I would love to be a rich neighborhood gossip."
And I was also like, "Oh, and she's got someone cooking for her right now. That's so nice." Like I was like, I'm so jealous of what's happening. But she's trying to talk to her, and man, she just does not hesitate on giving every answer possible.
Every piece of information. She's so critical.
And I was like, you have moved forward the plot by like miles compared to any other part in this movie. So thank you, gossipy neighbor. You are our favorite character in this movie.
So then Valerie goes back. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I like the part where she was like, oh, but the story gets real fucked up, so you're going to need more wine. And she's just like, I'm just going to keep pouring. I'm alone here all day. If I can talk about shit with someone, I'm going to get you real drunk to where you can't leave the house and keep talking to you. It seems like a good friendship. I hope that carried on after the movie.
Yeah, she was generous with both her wine and her gossip.
So then after that, you were saying Valerie goes back to...
She goes back to the old man, the dad. I don't know if that happens directly, but that's my next note. Just because he makes a really shitty comment to her.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, wow, you're such a beautiful woman. Do you have a mind to match that face? Fuck off. Oh my God.
I thought it was the one at the end where it was like, girls should be little girls and shouldn't be. Or something. It was very much like women shouldn't have any opinions or do anything at all other than exist for being pretty. I could have misunderstood that. You also find out that he is just
young girls should be just that. Young girls. I wrote it down.
Young girls should be just that. But then before this, you kind of get hints of it, but you find out that he is just completely obsessed with art. And he just shoved that shit into his kids.
There's a scene earlier that really reaffirmed the sibling thing of him with the kids in an art gallery, and he's like lecturing them on some painting. And you just see the girl, like little boy is like off to the side.
I thought it was 2 little girls when we first watched it. I was
like, that's because I knew it was siblings and you hadn't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody else understood it, but just right. Oh gosh. And then he said a quote that she uses later, but like art is light to heal a wound, or
something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember what was it. Art is light, something about wounds and light. Yeah, guess it wasn't that important.
I'm trying to make a Doubting Thomas joke. Art is fingers you stick in a wound.
Oh, gross. And then light comes out, right?
And then light comes out. Light comes pouring out.
Oh, gross. But then that's kind of what you find. That's when you find out that they are making all of these, they are taking these new couples and they are murdering them and placing them in this and putting out these quotes with each one of them, basically to be like, our love should be valid even though we're brother and sister. And then
Right.
right after they talk about that, they then have a very intimate scene between the brother and sister, and then it's really gross, and I'm like, I just don't want to watch this. This
Yeah.
is making me very uncomfortable. But then the fake British girl, real
Desi.
British, fake
Desi.
American,
Desi.
Desi and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Well, first, this scene was unnecessary. I think they should have cut it out. But she was writing a piece on him, and
Mm-hmm.
he finds the piece and he gets upset and he leaves. And then she comes back and she's like, "It's fine, I won't write it." Then he comes back and he's like, "No, write the article." So it was important for her to write an article, but I don't think that they needed that long segue to get to this point where she
Yeah.
wrote an article. I think they could have just wrote. They could have just
Wrote. They
written.
could have just written
They
it.
could
Yeah.
they could have just written the article, and it didn't need to have the puff piece for Jeffrey Dean Morgan or whatever they were planning on doing. But they then write an article then Desi writes an article where she's trying to be like, I understand why you did it. I understand that you had
To
you
reach
had a
out to the murderers, she writes
yeah.
this article, sympathizing with them.
Yes, exactly. And basically saying that their love is valid and they understand and the door should be open. And right before this, I think that there was a gay couple that was found,
There
and
was,
it
and
was
I
like their
was like,
world comes full circle or something, or it comes full circle was the quote on the
yeah,
postcard.
yeah. Um, and the point was basically like, this used to be taboo, but it's fine now. Like, why can't that be true for sibling love also?
Yeah. So then that's kind of where it's getting at, is just like, our love is valid, please allow it. And then she's very sympathetic. And then so was it trying to be a bait? Because it seemed like it
Yes,
was a bait. Okay.
I think it was a bait. And it like is really effective. And they are chasing JDM and Desi. And here's my note for this scene. Can you make a car flip over by bopping it on its bottom?
Yeah, that
they
was
just like they just like bop the back of their car and Jeffrey Dean Morgan's car flips the fuck over
yeah. There are
and they scoop up
multiple things I have
Desi.
to say, because whenever it flips over, and then the next scene is he's waking up, he still has a gun in his hand. I was like, you didn't take the gun from the guy. He had it's just directly in his
You
hand
know, we didn't even talk about that gun. Where'd he get that gun? His
from the
charming
German.
German cop friend just gave him a gun and was like, you know what to do.
Yeah, and you're like, is it because he's American?
Is it because
Is
he's
that why?
American?
Is
Are you
that part of it?
stereotyping
Yeah, that's what this entire movie is, just stereotyping Americans. Um, oh, which also, Pe- Peter. I'm never gonna try to say that incorrectly. But he ends up saying at the beginning that he thinks Americans are really arrogant.
Oh
But that's
yeah.
kind of like that's kind of an underlying theme in the movie, is that Americans are kind of awful, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Yeah.
But it's mostly about all the main characters are American or trying to be. Um, so then at this point they have right before that, that's where they send the newspaper the picture article of her, which had her picture in it,
Oh, of
to be like,
Desi.
we're taking her. And they said that their final painting was going to be a Modigliani. Modigliani.
Beautiful.
I don't know what it's but it's a woman that's supposed to be laying just all bare. And so they've taken her to lay her out in that pose and for that to be their
In
final
the
piece.
tundra? It's
Yeah,
like
no, that's rough.
snowy. It's cold.
Yeah, they weren't even trying to make it comfortable. They did say it wouldn't hurt. Oh, you also find out that the brother, or the male murderer, is he doesn't want to do this, and he's not
Yeah.
wanted to do it, and he just wants to live his life, and he's just like, we have a lot of money. Can we just disappear? Can we please
Right.
just disappear?
Let's
No
just
one
go
has
be
to
in
know we're
love.
related. Let's
Right.
just go do this. No one can tell we're related right now. Let's just go be what we want to be. And she was like, no, we have to do this. And she's very focused on completing their task of murdering people and placing them the way that they are, because they want to make a message and they want to make the world better for people like them. which I'm going to be
No,
real with you.
she's just straight up a murderer, and
Yeah.
she's like hiding behind this message.
That's true. That is true. Because I was going to say, if you want to make the world better for people like you, murdering people is not going to make people come around to your message. I'm going to be.
No, that's going to drive people away.
Yeah, that's at least doing it that way. I don't know. I don't feel like that's a good. Don't feel like that's a good. But then you have your nice showdown at the end with Jeffrey Dean Morgan waking back up, and he has to also flag down. Oh, that might be why they didn't take the gun, because they didn't expect him to get over that far. But then he flags down like a giant truck, and the truck drives him, and then he gets out. And the boy's trying to be very kind. They're actually both very kind while they're trying to murder her, but they're still trying to murder her. And then Jeffrey Dean Morgan gets there, has a gun. A tussle ensues. He ends up shooting the brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're led to believe that he does end up bleeding out. He does not make it to the end.
That's what I assumed.
And the sister tries to drag him along. And then the movie, so like you think it would wrap up around this point. The movie Pulled a Lord of the Rings ended 15 times, had so many endings where different things happened. So the first ending was Jeffrey Dean Morgan waking up in the hospital being like, I am in a sling, I'm doing better now, or whatever. And then you find out, this was the biggest spoiler, which I think that they said in passing, but they were never related.
What?
They weren't brother and sister.
What?
Yeah, exactly. I had to rewind it twice. I had to rewind it twice to get these lines because they made it so quiet and they didn't make it a big deal. The brother and sister were born 3 years apart in 2 different states, but the father wanted them to be genetically superior, so he specifically chose those children based on their genetics, but they were related in no way.
Oh my God.
They couldn't even be farther related.
Oh my God.
So they could have lived their lives happily together forever, and they had absolutely
no murder,
no relation.
no reason to murder. Oh my God.
So then that's what Jeffrey Dean Morgan, he was like,
movie.
they could have been fine. Like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's like last lines were like, oh, this didn't have to happen. My daughter didn't have to be killed. Fucking great. That was like the last bit of what you get from Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and then it like goes over to I say that there were like 3 endings. There were 2, but I still felt like it went on for too long because that one was so important and they made it so not important. And I was like, this is blowing my mind that this does not matter. But the one right after it, then you go to the father, and the father is still in jail, who is also that guy from American Horror Story, which doesn't help. But he's a really good actor, and I like him a lot.
Oh, let me pull him up.
Yeah, the guy who played the father.
I didn't recognize him. You know, we've gone this whole podcast without using Blondo's name.
Marina.
That's
funny because that's the only name I remembered.
I didn't remember it until like my third to last note mentions it.
Yeah, I knew her name because I think Marina's a pretty name. So
it is a pretty name.
Yeah, Marina and Simon. Yeah, it turns out not related. Which, I mean, if you look at the 2, not only actors but characters, they don't look alike at all. So,
no.
Yeah, so they didn't need to go through that. They were never related. They could have been in love the entire time, and it would not have been taboo.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what I'm talking about. Twist on twist on twist. Twists that you don't even hear.
And okay, for the home listener, I was real drunk when I watched this movie, so I need you to help me decipher this last note. Hey Smith and his dumb kid on the phone. Not fair that he still has a daughter. So does Marina call Hey Smith?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So I was mad that like Jeffrey Dean Morgan lost his daughter and this dickbag still has his.
That's a good point. I was gonna say he called and she just said hello father, and it was like in Russian because I think that their mother was
she
Russian.
spoke Russian, yeah, periodically throughout the movie. Yeah.
Yep, and that's why I was like, oh, sequel? Oh. That's when I was like, is there a sequel? And so the sequel I'm expecting to be the Picasso murders, where she's so angry that the love of her life has been murdered and she has been lied to her entire life and she didn't need to murder the first one. We get the more gruesome sequel called the Picasso murders.
The Picasso murders.
I'd watch that.
Yeah,
but it doesn't take much for me to watch something. I mean,
I'll watch hot garbage.
yeah, every day. All right. Yeah, that's I think all I have to say about that. I thought it was fine. I think it's rated as like a 5 point something. I think most of the movies we've reviewed so far have been a 5 point something on IMDb. Except Dead and Breakfast deserves it a full 10. everything
Dead and
else has
Breakfast
probably
deserves
been.
a 15 or 20.
Yeah, I was gonna say everything else has been rated pretty accurately. This probably deserves to be in the fives just because it's kind of forgettable. But I think that everyone did a pretty good job in the movie. Oh, I didn't even get to talk about the crying scene that I loved when they found her hands.
Yes, he breaks down.
Yeah, and at first I was like, because he was like, go back to that picture. And I was like, oh, and I was like, is that how they would? I hadn't seen that kind of reaction in a movie before.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, oh, I was like, is that too much though? If I saw my daughter's hands and that was the last piece of her that I had not known was like, you don't hope that your daughter's arms are alive, but like,
No, but you want your daughter whole,
yeah, and that's just like the last piece of her. The gross part, which we didn't talk about, was that her arms were stuck to a man's face in the Scream.
Yeah.
So her cut off.
Oh, I did recognize that one. I was like, got one.
Yeah. And I did. So the one that his daughter was placed in, where the man had the arm in the mouth, the Goya painting, where I can't remember, but it's someone eating his son.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of it, but that one
But I can imagine it. That one's a popular reaction image on Twitter, so I recognized it. But I couldn't tell you who painted it. Goya, you said?
Goya, yeah.
Okay.
Let me Google that. Give me one moment. Saturn devouring his son.
Saturn.
Yeah, by Goya. Yeah, Goya's got some pretty gross paintings.
You know what? Good for him.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Okay, so what are we watching next week to continue our painting or our art theme?
So for our next art one, we're going to be watching Velvet Buzzsaw, which is available on Netflix. So if you guys want to watch it before our episode comes out, that's where you can check it out at.
Hell yeah. Join us. This has been Never Show the Monster. Once again, I'm Kelly Attaway.
I'm Chelsea Hollander.
And you can find us on Twitter at NoShowMonster. You can email us at NoShowMonster@gmail.com. And again, if you're watching Wheel of Time, check out the 13th Depository, my other Wheel of Time podcast. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.
And final credit goes to Ryan Tate Art for the beautiful cover art that we have for our
podcast. Thank you for remembering to call him out. We talk about it every time. Our art is beautiful. Ryan Tate is very talented. Big shout out to him
on Instagram, or he has an Etsy shop. I think it's also under the name of Ryan Tate Art Store or something like that. But yeah, just look up Ryan Tate Art if you can.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you next week. Bye.